Hi there, welcome back. So, how to avoid getting them dreaded punctures, or the punctures that you'll get in your clinchers. Some would say if you don't want to get punctures in your clinchers, then go to tubeless tyres. However, you can still get punctures in tubeless tyres, much the same as you can in the clinchers. The only difference is that you won't get the pinch flats that you may occasionally get in clinchers. It's not something I've particularly suffered from. However, it's another reason why some people do go over to the tubeless. So I'll touch on the tubeless at the end of the video. So most important point initially comes down to the quality of the tyres that you actually put in on your bike, and there's terms that are branded around, one of them being puncture proof. Well, no tyre is actually puncture proof. There's a level of puncture resistance within the tyre, and the TPI casing threads per inch helps with that, and also various manufacturers have their own terminology. Specialised have things called armadillos, whereas with the Continentals it's a Duraskin sort of Vectra puncture protection that they use. So I use in particular for me is the Continental Grand Prix 4 Seasons. I've done a separate video on them tyres. They're fantastic tyres for me. However, we're not going to specifically talk about them, but click on the link below if you want to have a look at them tyres and get a lead on them. I'm not sponsored by Continental, but they're just a very good tyre and they work for me. So let's crack on and let's have a look at some of the ways you can prevent them punctures. So one of the key reasons that you can pick up punctures is that people wait far too long before they actually change their tyres. So you could have bald spots on your tyres. Your tyres can still look in good condition, but the walls may have cracks in, which can also lead to a failure of the tyres. What I tend to do is, before I go on any bike packing adventure, I'll always change both my tyres and change the tubes at the same time. So one of the keys is, when you change a tyre, always put a new tube in at the same time. Don't skimp on cheap inner tubes. Don't worry about a super light inner tube. You know, the odd gram or ounce here or there is going to make no difference whatsoever to the vast majority of us. And what you want is that added level of protection of a decent inner tube. And then you've obviously got your new tyre on the top of that. So again, it's going to give you a little bit more chance to avoid them punctures. Okay, so that's one of the key points, is make sure that you change them tyres at the earliest opportunity, as soon as you start to see them deteriorate. Don't just let them run and run until they're bald. Okay, so another area to consider is always check the rims of your wheels. Okay, so check if you've been down or clipped any curbs, or if you've been over any potholes, because you may have caused a burr on the rim of your wheel here, which could then potentially damage the tube underneath. If you're changing your tube, then just check on the inside of that rim to make sure there's no burr that could obviously pierce your tube. Also check your rim tape, so you can see obviously good quality rim tape around the whole circumference of the wheel, and make sure that's all in place and secure and covering the spoke heads. Again, that will also help to prevent the heads of the spoke damaging your tube and subsequently causing another flat. Once you put your tube and your tyre obviously on your rims, then make sure that you inflate it to the correct pressure and the pressure for you. Really important, not just for cornering and for your roll resistance, but also is that once your tyres are inflated to the correct pressure, is that small items will subsequently ping away from your tread and not subsequently pierce the tread. And I run with mine about 110 psi. I mean, I'm particularly heavy, so I'm around about 110, so just over 17 or 17 stone 4. So I run with mine about 110 psi, and it's really important when you go and purchase your tyres is that you look at the maximum psi of the tyres and look at it obviously relevant to your body weight, and you inflate accordingly. Okay, So another important point is always check your tyres prior to riding, and this is especially important if you're on a day-to-day ride, or if you're on a bike packing venture using your bike for commuting. What happens is that various items, certainly if it's been raining, can stick in the tread, and what you find is the next day when you go to ride off, that item that's stuck in your tread because the moisture has stuck it there will then go through and penetrate the tube. So always what I tend to do is I run with a little piece of sponge or rag, and I'll just run around the top of the tyre, just checking, make sure there's nothing sticking in there, and again that's going to be another area that's going to hopefully stop you getting the punctures. Tiny little pieces of flint or stone or glass get into the cracks of your tyre, and what you find is quite often you hear people start off for a ride in the morning, and within a very short period of time, you know, they're getting a puncture maybe 100, 200 metres down the road, and this would be one of those type of occurrences. So make sure obviously that you run your hands round, run a rag round both your tyres, and hopefully that will avoid getting that type of puncture. So what about goop or slime tubes? Well, yeah, that's another option. I have used it in the past. I've used it on a mountain bike. Yeah, it's good stuff. I don't tend to use it, in all honesty, in my road bikes. I find that by following the protocol that I've laid out in the video, it's been enough for me, and I've not felt the necessity to use gloop or slime. And you get slime tubes, of course, as well, where it's all contained within it. So it's a liquid, and what it does is it stays as a liquid inside your tube, and then if you get a small piercing up to around about 3 mil, then this liquid sealant comes out through the hole and subsequently seals it. So yeah, it's good stuff. I've got friends that use it and they swear by it still, but yeah, it's good stuff. But it's another option for you. So goop or slime tubes if you want an even further level of protection. Okay, so what about the tubeless option then? Tubeless tyres. Well, that's another option for sure. One thing that you do avoid, of course, because there's no tubes in the tyres, is you avoid the pinch flats. Like I say, if you go down a pothole, if you hit a curb, it's not something that I've suffered from, I've got to be honest, but people do. So yeah, it's another option. You're supposed to get better or lower roll resistance. It's supposed to be a little bit grippier. In all honesty, for me personally, I've never had a problem with grip on the tyres that I run. I've never had a problem with you know, a lower roll resistance. You know, my tyres roll, you know, very well. But again, it's another option to consider. If you get a puncture in your tubeless tyre, then the solution that you put inside the tubeless tyre contains small rubber particles, and that will block tiny little holes up to around about 2 millimeters. So a little bit like the gloop or the slime that you use in your tubes if you're using clinchers. So yeah, it's quite effective. If you get a cut in that tyre, that tubeless tyre, that solution won't repair, then the alternative is to put a tube in your tubeless tyre. Of course, you have to take the tubeless valve off, but it's a get you home, and it's something that people, you know, that run the tubeless do. So yeah, there's another option there. Like I say, I tend to stick with the clinchers on all of my bike packing ventures, and I'll carry a couple of spare tubes. I just think for me it's always been a better option, and so I don't feel that there's a necessity for me to look at the tubeless for certainly for my adventure riding. Certainly I might look at it and have a roll with it on my stealth bike, but yeah, so that's another option. So you've got the tubeless tyre option there. So hopefully there's some key information there for you to avoid getting them punctures, and to give you some background to it. For me personally, if I took 3 rides into consideration, so if I took the NC500 and I took cycling across Ireland and cycling across the Hebrides, around about 14 to 1500 miles in total, and I just got 1 puncture. So I don't think that's bad, considering some of the weather conditions and some of the terrain that I was going over was pretty horrendous. And when you think of the amount of weight that's being transferred through the bike and certainly through the tyres onto the road for me, so my body weight, as I mentioned previously, 110k, I'm carrying another 10-11k on my back and under the saddle of the bike, so it's 120k sort of bearing down on them tyres, so that's excellent for me. So yeah, that's some of the measures. Hopefully if you check them out, hopefully it's been informative for you. Any of the information and the tyres that I use on my bikes I'll put in the link below, and hopefully you will remain as good as puncture free as me, and you'll enjoy your adventures. So take care, safe cycling, all the best.